Something that most creators can agree with me on is that dealing with copyright issues in their videos can be pretty annoying. In my personal experience, I've had to change my outro music, pretty much every instrumental I've used in my videos, and take other steps to make sure I can actually get paid for what I make. And all this stuff sucks, don't get me wrong, I don't like being limited on what I can use due to YouTube systems, but this is fairly minor in the grand scheme of things. The biggest issue with copyright on YouTube are the bad actors who would abuse the system to take down videos about themselves. There have been many examples of this in the past decade or so, with one of the cases I'm talking about being as recent as 2022. But for this video, I've narrowed it down to 7 people who've gotten into drama due to false strikes. Some of these are the big situations that most people would have heard about, while others are more obscure and loss of time, but all of which were situations which I felt were worth noting. I'll have timestamps in the description for every situation I talk about. A lot of my points will be repetitive in this video due to the nature of what I'm talking about, so if you want to hear about a specific situation that you find interesting, they'll be in the description. And with this intro out of the way, sub to the channel if you like videos like this one, and let's talk about the stories of YouTube's copyright abusers. JustDestiny, not to be confused with Destiny, the political streamer, is a name that most people watching this video either haven't heard of in a while or don't recognize under this username. He's rebranded to the name Mori and has done several different types of content, but he's most consistently made commentary videos. His name isn't really brought up all that much anymore, as he's not really a creator that gets into all that much controversy. He's just doing his own thing. But 6 years ago, this was a very different story. Back in 2019, Destiny was getting into some controversy due to the explicit nature of his thumbnails, with the main critique of them being that he was exploiting children for views, and he didn't really like what people were saying about him, so he kept arguing with them on Twitter. This in itself is obviously just some small controversy that would have gone away had he not said anything. And hell, even after this point, the heat probably would have gotten off him if he didn't do what he did next. A small YouTuber at the time, LT Cobra, would end up making a video on Destiny to criticize him about his thumbnails. This usually wouldn't be notable. YouTubers make videos criticizing people all the time, and this one wasn't exactly unique compared to others. But what happened as a result is his video getting struck down by Destiny. I find it to be strange whenever commentators of all people end up striking people for fair use videos. Out of all YouTubers, you of all people should 100% know better, especially since Destiny himself has spoken out against false copyright strikes in the past, so he was a hypocrite for his actions here. To say that this caused him to get a lot of flack is an understatement. Destiny eventually turned into public enemy #1 in the commentary community for a short period, with every drama channel under the sun making a video about him and defending Cobra. Hell, people like PewDiePie and Keemstar found the story and started to cover it, and it blew up to massive heights. The story was big at this point, but would you believe if I told you that this was only the beginning? There's so much more after this point that I need to talk about. He started to double down on the strike, making a video response, going on 2 interviews, one of which will be relevant later, and even sent Cobra a cease and desist letter. I'm not even joking. Destiny was threatening to sue the guy if he didn't stop talking about him. He would claim in an interview that it was just supposed to be a warning, but I'd call it a blatant threat. Why would you send a cease and desist if you're just trying to send a warning? It's clear that he wanted the whole situation to go away so he can move on with his career. And to top it off, the law firm he was using to send this out apparently didn't exist, so this cease and desist was essentially a nothing burger. If you have to fake a cease and desist just to get someone to stop talking about you on the internet, at one point do you stop and say, maybe I am actually doing something wrong? This is all pathetic and did nothing to stop the backlash going towards him. It only attracted more people to start criticizing him, which is 100% justified. If he just took the L at any point before he got this far, this whole thing would have calmed down, but he didn't. This is some of the dumbest handling of a controversy that I've ever seen. And I'd like to say that this was the end of it, but it really wasn't. During this whole situation, JustDestiny was undoubtedly the villain of the whole thing, and I don't see anyone denying this at this point, but as the situation unfolded, certain things started to happen that turned him into a victim. And I'll explain what this happened in a moment, but I'm gonna simplify a lot of the details here just so this section doesn't become ridiculously long. If you want to hear about this specific event in more detail, I'd recommend Nicholas the Oreo's video on the subject. But before I get into this, I need to provide a bit of context. Keemstar conducted an interview with Destiny on February 10th, 2019, and most of it was fine. Keem was asking some hard-hitting questions during it to try and poke at Destiny's brain a bit on the situation, but where it went off the rails was when Keem asked this.
From the outside looking in, like, it makes me have to ask this question, like, do you touch kids?
Oh my god, really?
But do you? Do you touch kids?
Yeah, this was bad. Keem ended up losing 3,000 subs after this upload, which would cause him to get even more involved in the story behind the scenes. He was added to a commentary group chat called the NCO, and a lot happened as a result. But to sum up a really long story, Destiny ended up being doxxed due to speculation that he might be a pedo. I'm not kidding. I don't care how bad the strike was, I don't care how explicit his thumbnails were, and I don't care that he was self-destructing publicly. He didn't deserve this happening to him. Hell, nobody I'm covering in this video would deserve this for that matter. This is how you turn a guy who, let me be clear, did a lot wrong into a victim. This stuff causes people to ignore the actual issues of the case, giving Destiny a lot more sympathy and charitability, which wouldn't have been given had this not happened. This is such a dumb situation, and 6 years after I first heard about it, I'm still shocked that this happened. It just doesn't seem real at all, and I can only hope that nothing bad happened to Destiny himself with this info being found out. By the way, don't harass anyone I mentioned in this section. This happened 6 years ago at this point, and everyone has obviously moved past this. The only people still bringing this up are YouTubers like me who document stuff like this, since it's an interesting bit of history, and with that, I'm done with this section. Moving on. Suzy Lu is one of those cases where the controversy she's gotten into is much more interesting than her actual videos. Her channel hosts really boring reaction videos to anime, and that's about it. She sometimes gives these really exaggerated reactions to the things she talks about, but no real commentary, and if you replaced her with any other person, her channel would get the same amount of views, since her audience isn't really there for her. They're watching her for the shows. So you might be wondering, why am I talking about such a boring personality instead of something much more interesting? Well, in order for you to understand, let me go back to 2018 to give some context here. At this time, the YouTuber Mark After Dark made a Let's Play of The Last Guardian VR and put an edited clip of Suzy Lu, essentially making fun of her in the beginning of his video. Nothing would happen as a result of this for a while. In fact, a full year had passed without the video causing any sort of fuss. But in early 2019, Suzy decided that it would be a good idea to copyright strike the video, and this decision would result in her getting an immense amount of backlash, as is expected when someone does this. I think everyone watching this video knows the drill at this point. The odd thing with this case is that usually when videos are striked in this way, it's because the original work was criticizing the content creator that sent out the strike in the first place. But that's not what Mark's video did. There was simply a 30-second clip that was edited in a way to make fun of Suzy. It had been up for an entire year up until this point with no issues at all, and to top it off, the video wasn't even all that popular. 7 years after it was uploaded, it still only has around 13,000 views, a lot of which came from the aftermath of this controversy. Even if you ignore the fact that this was a false strike and she shouldn't have done it, the reason for doing it in the first place just doesn't make sense at all from her perspective. Commentary YouTubers are known to jump on topics that involve strikes like this. This is bound to only bring more negative attention to her, and it only makes sense for her to do this if she was completely clueless of what the consequences could be, and I have a hard time believing that. What also didn't make sense was her making a response video to defend her actions, which is lost of time with no archives. Very smart decision, Suzy, bringing this drama to an audience that probably didn't know about it before. You really know how to manage your own channel there. So yeah, Suzy is obviously a bad actor on the platform for doing this whole thing, right? But if she left it at this and retracted the strike, she could have gotten away with this completely without getting any more shit. People forget about controversies like this pretty easily as they can become boring and stale, and they'll just move on to the next thing. But this wasn't the only thing that happened though. In her response video that I mentioned previously, she mentioned how she was flagging videos to get them taken down, and coincidentally, videos critical of her started to get striked off the website. So that left one question in the air. Was she responsible for these strikes? And the answer to that was seemingly yes. She went on Augie RFC's live stream and showed her flag history, and every video in there were things talking about her situation.
Hey, wait. Look on the right-hand side, you can scroll down.
This is not a good look, Suzy.
Wait a minute, it's all the stuff talking about the story. Wait a minute.
Yeah,
wait a minute. Suzy, no!
Oof.
Oof.
But yeah, we need
hateful
but
and
yeah,
abusive
we need-
content, harmful and dangerous acts.
we need screen
hateful and
share.
abusive content. Oh
We
my
need
God.
that screen share right now.
Oh
Yeah.
my
God.
It was the biggest self-report I'd ever seen in one of these situations, and I'm not surprised that this clip still gets brought up in the commentary community to this day. After this, a bunch of other things started to come out about Suzy that made her look worse, which I won't cover because those things don't really line up with the point of this video. You can watch these videos on her to hear about those. I'll have the links in the description. But what I want to talk about now is the sort of second coming of the controversies with Suzy, from December 2019 to April of 2020. The first thing that happened in this time was her channel getting terminated for copyright related reasons. reasons. For some more context around this, earlier in the year, she switched from gaming videos to her infamous reactions. And in all honesty, she would have 100% deserved the termination. Not that I really care that she's technically stealing anime episodes, but the fact that she was willing to strike other creators for transformative content, but made videos that barely had any commentary in them is very ironic to me. She was frankly just a disease on the platform, and the next few months would prove that to be true as well. Oh yeah, and she was also featured on YouTube Rewind that year somehow, but that's not really all that important to the story. In April of 2020, the Suzy Lu drama would get a lot of attention once again, as John Swan made a 30-minute documentary on her, but it was struck down just as it was receiving notoriety, which ironically helped John out a lot more, bringing him from around 12,000 subs to 60k within a month. And other YouTubers, notably Tipster, were also flagged due to videos covering Suzy. So this made a theory come up that she was the one responsible for all the takedowns, just like in 2019. But this didn't stay a theory for long, as she just straight up admitted to sending videos to her partner manager. Why you would ever admit this is beyond me, and it just goes to show that someone on YouTube favored her, considering that none of the videos being strike down were actually breaking the guidelines. It also brings into question why she got her channel back in late 2019 in the first place, even though her videos probably weren't fair use. This whole thing was one of the biggest controversies of 2020, and that was in the year that had H3 versus Keemstar, Chris Hansen, Deji, Onision, etc. So that just shows how crazy it was. But you might be wondering, how is Suzy doing now? Well, she's sitting at 500k subs today and making the same anime reaction videos that she's been making for years, with an average view count of around 20 to 30,000 views. So this stuff hasn't affected her all that much. So you might be wondering, why do people still watch her? And I think I know the #1 reason why. Nobody watches her for her and haven't for years. She makes generic reaction videos and can be replaced by anyone else. So if you don't need to like the personality of the person you're watching to like the content, why would you stop watching? I don't think someone who regularly watches her content would care at all if she's a bad person. The main people who were mad at her were commentary YouTubers and their fan bases. Her fans couldn't care less, so this whole thing was overall ineffective. The only thing it would have helped is she was actually terminated, as she was clearly a pest on the website. Usually I don't advocate for someone to be off the website. If they're trying to kick other people off though, that's where I draw the line there personally. But this will never happen, especially not 5 years after YouTube was being pressured to do something regarding her. At this point, I can only hope that she stopped targeting creators who criticized her back in 2020 and hasn't done it since. And this can just be known as an interesting bit of old YouTube drama. Moving on. I know that by seeing this name, someone is going to be very annoying and point out that Pokimane is more of a Twitch streamer than a YouTuber, so if you do that, here's an acknowledgement of how totally funny and correct you are. Here's a medal for your accomplishment. Do whatever you want with it. It's pretty special. But anyways, Pokimane is someone who's gotten into a lot of controversy in her time on the YouTube platform. The most recent incidents she's been criticized for aren't really all that noteworthy, but there's a reason why everything she does gets nitpicked to death. And to understand why, we have to go back to late 2018 here. What happened at the time to start this off is that Keemstar made a tweet making fun of an SS Sniper Wolf fan with the caption, "Alexa, what is a virgin?" which apparently caused a bunch of people to go to the guy's account and say things to him, and this would cause the fan to private his Twitter. So Pokimane, seeing this whole thing go down, decided to criticize Keem for this, with her having an issue with him going after someone's fans. Keem called her fake for this, she responded to that, and they had this whole back and forth about the topic, where neither one was really able to understand each other. And this isn't really noteworthy in the grand scheme of things. It seems like every content creator on the website has had an argument with Keem at one point in time, and this one isn't really more interesting than the others. It's just Pokimane grandstanding a bit too much and Keemstar going overboard in response to her. So yeah, not much here. But what would happen as a result of this is where the controversy really begins. A small YouTuber at the time named Bowblax uploaded a video, which is essentially just a compilation of the whole argument between Keem and Poki. No commentary, just the tweets and full videos. This is slightly unrelated, by the way, but watching the video back was actually a good resource to refresh my mind of that whole drama. Not to give Bowblax too much credit here, as it's not that hard to do, but I just wanted to note that. A little bit after this was uploaded, Pokimane would strike the video down, which was obviously a pretty bad move. There was a bit of debate among Bowblax's community and detractors of his on whether the strike on the video was valid or not, mainly due to the fact that his video wasn't really seen as transformative. It was just a compilation of tweets and videos. But here's the thing, even if it was not fair use, I'm not saying it's not, by the way, this is just a what if. Taking down the video literally only caused it to spread even more when Bowblax re-uploaded it, and it caused Poki to go through a huge amount of backlash, so again, not the smartest move. Also, it's not like her issue was that Bowblax was using her content without her permission. Her issue was that the video would cause her more drama, so in my eyes at least, it was still her abusing the system, since she was trying to sweep drama that happened with her under the rug. And it was such a stupid situation too. Literally nobody would have cared about that after a week, but she just had to strike it down. It doesn't exactly make sense to me, and it never will. A bunch of other drama revolving around this happened, including the YouTuber Fainted making a video, which blew the situation up to massive heights. You might remember him as the guy who used to read funny tweets or memes for his videos, but this situation is how he got popular in the first place. And there's a lot of funny, smaller dramas revolving around his involvement in this thing, including some really odd videos attempting to criticize him at the time. I won't talk about any of that in depth though, as it's pretty unrelated. I just thought that I should at least mention Fainted's video though, as I'd be leaving out a massive part of the controversy without it. But anyways, Pokimane and Bowblax ended up settling things, with his video being reinstated eventually, and the situation would conclude naturally. Poki, to my knowledge, hasn't repeated something like this again past this point. There's always a chance that it could happen again, but I have no reason to judge her personally based on this now. It's been like 6 years, and there's other stuff to criticize about her if you really want to go after her. My personal opinion of her is that I don't really like her and she's very annoying, but I also don't think she's as bad as people say she is. But yeah, that's gonna be it for this section. Moving on. This section is going to be pretty short, as there's not a lot to cover here, but I thought that the situation was interesting enough that it deserved a mention in this video, so let's get into it. Do any of you remember the commentary channel JT? Back in 2019 to 2020, he would make videos similar to what we would call slop content now, although his videos weren't really milking drama, and were essentially just on whatever he wanted to talk about. He ended up quitting back in 2020 with no word on his whereabouts since, and his old Twitter ad is taken up by a privated account that just says former YouTuber. So it's clear that he just wants to move away from this as much as possible. But why is this exactly? Why did he leave all of a sudden? Well, if you look into it for more than 1 second, it becomes pretty obvious why. In September of 2020, Keemstar released an interview with Leafy on the Drama Alert channel talking about his termination from the website, and in the upper left corner, you could see a thumbnail that Keem edited in there. Normally, this wouldn't have much significance at all, but this just so happened to be JT's thumbnail. And because of it being featured in this way, JT decided that the most rational thing he could do was just to take the entire interview down. I'm not kidding. The interview had nothing to do with him. It was just Leafy and Keem talking about YouTube's antics at the time. But because the image was in there and wasn't really being used in a transformative way, I guess it might have been technically valid. I don't really know how copyright law works in this regard, so correct me if I'm wrong. But legality aside, it was a really dumb move. JT gained absolutely nothing by doing this and only harmed himself. And even if you compare his case to other people who strike down videos before, it just doesn't make sense. They would usually do it due to criticism being thrown at them, while JT just did it because a thumbnail was included in a video. It's so strange, dude. I will never understand it. Now, as you could guess, striking Drama Alert didn't really go well for him. He was threatened with lawsuits by Keemstar, which ended up being settled out of court, and the strike ended up being removed. He made 2 videos addressing this to my knowledge, one of which is no longer up, and I can only find a screenshot of it, and the other one is still public to this day, which is also coincidentally the final video on his YouTube channel. Everything was settled here, and the story naturally died, with only the people who were there at the time actually remembering what exactly happened. And that was that. JT doesn't really have much of a legacy here on the website, and this video might be one of the last times he's ever talked about. I used to watch his channel back then, but his videos are pretty much replaceable, and the situation is the only thing that interests me about him in modern day, but not enough to acknowledge it any further than I have here. That's about it for this section. Moving on. Just gonna make a little disclaimer here for this section. This is not about any recent drama surrounding Bowblax. So if you're here for that, then you could skip this section and go to the next one. But if you want to stick around, I still think what happened here is pretty interesting. Where we last left off in this video regarding Bowblax was when he was copyright struck by Pokimane and how everything had gotten resolved afterwards. But what I didn't tell you is that this essentially kickstarted Bowblax's career. Along with him doing a series called Twitter Versus, he became one of the biggest YouTubers in this section of the commentary community he was a part of. And this is all built off the fact that he was a victim of a big bad YouTuber striking a video that was just an archive of tweets and Twitter videos. I'd say he got pretty lucky here. The guy had a YouTube channel where all he had to do was just read tweets regarding drama and he would get paid for it. All he had to do was just not get into drama and make good decisions, but he just couldn't do that, and he would get into a controversy that was eerily similar to the Pokimane one. For some context, in 2020, an old edgy song that Bowblax made called the BLM song, I still laugh every time I remember that this exists. got leaked online. There was some backlash towards him because of this, most notably from H3H3, who acted like the song existing was some huge issue at the time. But most people were just making fun of it and treating it like a meme. And as to be expected, honestly. He's in the commentary community. That sort of thing would be taken more seriously if he was in any other part of the internet, but the people you find in here tend to be a bit edgier than most. This is where it should have ended. If Bowblax were to just joke about it, briefly address it, or just ignore it entirely, he would have been completely fine. I would not be talking about this 4.5 years later had he just done that. But that's not what happened. Instead, Bowblax decided that it would be a good idea to strike down re-uploads of the song, with a video that was fair use also getting caught in the crossfire. And to say that this was a scummy move to pull is me putting it lightly. Considering that the Pokimane situation happened, it's ridiculous that he felt like he had the right to do this to begin with. I get that some of the things he striked were straight re-uploads of the song, and he had the right to, but Bowblax has literally argued in favor of archiving videos in the past. Hell, his most popular video on an alt channel was a re-upload of an Etika Instagram livestream. This is definitely not fair use, and he doesn't own it, so him striking the song is hypocritical. Plus, if we look at the Pokimane situation again, his Keemstar vs Pokimane video was meant to archive tweets and videos from an argument going on at the time. While it's technically transformative, and if we were in court, it would probably be considered fair use, I think that this video and the re-upload of the song serve very similar purposes. Archiving. So striking down someone else for doing the same thing as you is very much wrong. But you want to know the best part? When Bowblax got backlash for this, he claimed that he striked the videos because he was high. I'm not kidding. This has to be one of the worst excuses I've ever heard for striking something, and I just covered JT in this video, so you know that it's a high bar. Instead of just taking responsibility for his own actions and admitting that what he did, he blamed weed for it. It's pretty pathetic if you ask me. Even if you were high while doing it and the story is true, it's not exactly the best thing to say publicly. It just looks like an excuse, with you blaming something else for your actions rather than yourself. After this, he would retract the strikes, and this would usually be the end of a situation like this. But who am I kidding? Every situation I've covered today didn't stop when the strikes were retracted. Usually something else happens that brings a situation to new heights after this, and the Bowblax story is no exception. On a live stream, he and the YouTuber Nicholas Diorio would have a major argument about the copyright situation, and it would end up spawning one of the most infamous clips in commentary history.
No, that's not an apology. There's no apology. That's an explanation. Let me speak. You. You motherfucker. You fucking bitch. My apology is not in there.
A lot would happen as a result of this clip, with Bowblax getting a lot of backlash and being made fun of, while Nick was also getting criticism for being way too harsh to his friend and making him have a breakdown. And while I can see what some people are talking about with how Nick was acting, at the end of the day, Nick was calling him out, and Bowblax as a result reacted like a child on stream. And this situation would plant a small seed in the back of everyone's mind, which wouldn't grow until years after this concluded. This was the first major thing against Bowblax, and if this didn't happen, maybe his current situation would be way different. But we really can't know for sure. Maybe he would have always turned out to be a lolcow. That's all for this section though. Moving on. Weiss, or however the fuck you pronounce his last name, is someone who's pretty hated online for a plethora of reasons. Over the past few years, there have been many allegations levied against him, and if I were to talk about any of those, it would completely sidetrack this video. So instead, I'm going to be covering the first major controversy that he ever got himself into, which is him versus the YouTuber Akumu. And in order to do this, we'll need to go back to late 2021. But I'll be real here, some of the context before the actual topic is pretty boring to me, so I'll leave what happened at this. Kai made a video about a small YouTuber named Akumu, and Akumu responded to it. The contents of either video and what they were arguing about at the time aren't really relevant to the story, so I'm not gonna go through that. But what I will go through is the heights of this little feud here, which is Kai striking Akumu's video down. This is kind of funny, to be honest. He kept changing his reasons for why he did it, but I can sum it up with 3 main points. Akumu messed with him and his girlfriend, so he messed with him back. 40% of Akumu's video was Kai's content, so it couldn't be fair use. And YouTube's copyright system found Akumu's video and showed it to him, so it couldn't be fair use at all. These arguments are all very dumb for a plethora of reasons. He striked it to get back at Akumu, which for sure makes this a misuse of YouTube's copyright system. The video is transformative due to Akumu responding to Kai's points and giving him criticism. It wasn't just some re-upload. And just because YouTube's copyright system detects a video doesn't mean that it should be taken down. With Kai being a commentary channel, you'd expect him to know that doing this would cause a good amount of backlash, but apparently not. In fact, he kept fighting with people, not admitting that he was wrong even once. It would later be pointed out as well that every everything he criticized Akumu for doing were things that he did in his own videos, making him a massive hypocrite. So what was he even mad about to begin with? I'll tell you what. It was obvious that he had personal issues with Akumu and took his video down out of malice. He'd deny this, but it's just plain obvious. And it gets even worse when John Swan enters the picture. To give some context here, this whole controversy was going on in the same year that John had that whole drama where he lied about a 12-year-old family friend controlling his accounts and trolling Dream. So he still had something to prove to the commentary community. And a perfect opportunity came up with the Akuma versus Kai situation. Something that John knew a lot about was copyright law due to researching and studying it for a few years. So he seemed like the perfect person to get involved in this whole thing. He set up a live stream which was supposed to be a debate with Kai. Half of the live stream was him filling his live audience in and what the drama was about, and the other half was the debate itself. So how did this go, you might ask? Well, I'd say that this was one of the last good things that John Swan left on the YouTube platform. The way I describe the debate is that it was both insufferable and hilarious. John would try and make a point and conduct a debate in a civil manner, but what Kai would respond with is not letting John speak and constantly interrupting him, bringing up completely irrelevant points that have really nothing to do with the conversation itself, and being really obnoxious. It made him look really dumb, and this debate would cause him to get a lot of backlash as a result, which was expected. John didn't exactly have a lot of people backing him at the time, but he was still a big YouTuber, and this debate was a big deal at the time. So after this whole thing had happened, you might be wondering, how exactly did Kai respond to being publicly humiliated like this? Well, he deleted his entire YouTube channel, which is pretty funny, not gonna lie. I can only assume that he did this because he realized how big the controversy was getting, so he purged everything as a result, but most other creators would just stay low and not fuel the drama. They don't instead delete their entire presence on social media. He had to know that this would cause more people to talk about him, right? This was such a ridiculous thing to do that I saw so many people making fun of him for this at the time. It very much caused more discussion than it lessened. Plus, he could have moved on from this if he just stopped talking about it and uploaded videos again. Copyright abuse is bad, but let's be real. It's nowhere near the worst thing a YouTuber can do, and people who had done much worse than Kai at the time were able to walk away from their controversies with almost no damage at all. So he would have been fine, but Kai's just an idiot, plain and simple. And after this point, he would get into an endless amount of controversies that, again, would throw this video completely off track if I covered them. His current YouTube channel only has 4 uploads on it, with the others that were up being unlisted or privated, and I think it's safe to say that he hasn't learned from this, and will probably never learn from the things he gets into. Though I'm not him, and I will never know for sure. If you want one sentence that can sum this whole thing up, it's this: a sensitive YouTuber who can't take criticism, does a bad thing, then hides from backlash. That's essentially what this whole thing was. And I'd be repeating myself if I continued talking about it, so let's move on to the final section of this video.
No doubt, indeed. My part of town.
Before I get into this story, I feel like a disclaimer is in order. Quantum is a very special case that I want to deal with in a careful way. He's much worse than just about everyone I've talked about in this video, with the only one even coming close being Suzy Lu, and that was far from being as bad as him. So to make sure that this video can actually stay up, my visuals will just be gameplay as screenshots for this section. I know it makes my video look like an average slop video, and quite frankly, Quantum is not going to see this video and get mad enough to strike it. But I think that taking precautions in this case is a very good thing to do, and you'll see why I have to be careful as the section goes on. So for those who have no idea what I'm talking about, you're probably wondering who Quantum is in the first place. On the surface, he seems like a YouTuber that got a minor amount of success doing TV reviews. He has around 90,000 subscribers and gets less than 10k views on average per video. He doesn't seem notable at all, but the amount of coverage that his controversies have gotten kind of eclipses his popularity on the website. So let's rewind the clock back 3 years to 2022. Elden Ring, one of the most popular games of the past few years, released in February. And while most people are having a good time while playing it, Quantum decided that this would be a good opportunity to get attention towards him by rage baiting. So he made a video shitting on the game, and this would cause one of the main players of the situation to come into the picture, Mischief. He made a video criticizing Quantum's takes on the game, which is nothing notable on its own, but what Mischief didn't know is that this would cause one of the biggest situations in that year. Quantum responded to Mischief in his comment section, threatening to take down his video through a copyright strike. Mischief, not wanting to deal with his channel potentially being threatened due to this, took down his video. He would end up re-uploading it later on and called out Quantum for his actions in that same video. And like you would expect, this caused a large amount of backlash to come his way. Bigger channels like Review Tech USA picked up the story, putting more eyes on it, and Quantum made a million response videos to everyone coming after him, even blaming Mischief specifically for all this happening, which was funny. The thing I find to be strange about the Quantum case is that pretty much every other person I've covered in this video eventually conceded and admitted they were wrong, even if it was just to stop backlash. But this was different. No amount of pushback could make this man calm down, which made him be seen as a dangerous to the YouTube community. And this is where another main player of the situation would come into the picture, the Actman. On April 10th, he would upload a video covering Elden Ring hot takes, and a good portion of it was spent criticizing Quantum for the way he went about presenting his opinions. He also briefly talked about the copyright situation and shouted out mischief, but at this point, it didn't seem like he wanted to get involved much, and he even said as much in the video.
And next up on the Elden Ring Clown Show is a rabbit hole I can't be bothered to go into.
But what Actman didn't realize is that this video would cause him to also get targeted by Quantum, pushing him further and further into the situation. On April 19th, Actman would receive an email from YouTube essentially telling him that although Quantum tried to give him a copyright strike, his video wouldn't be going down, due to them thinking it was fair use. And this would spark the release of the video, Copyright Abuse on YouTube, featuring Quantum TV 4 days later. To say that this video sparked a lot of discussion about copyright abuse on YouTube would be a massive understatement. Actman proved that there were several instances of Quantum breaking YouTube's rules, as well as mentioning several offensive comments from his past, which Quantum claims were from a hacked account, though it's most likely a lie. I won't get into the comments he made, as that would sidetrack this video, but overall, Actman's video is well made, entertaining, and brought a whole new light onto the situation that wasn't there before. This was a popular situation to talk about before this video, sure, but it rose to new heights after it came out. There's one part that didn't exactly age well, however. In the video, Actman was pretty confident that Quantum would get terminated, even stating that it was one of his main goals with making the video in the first place. But if you look at his channel now, it's still up. Clearly nothing happened, despite how confident everyone was. Now, I could sit here and criticize Actman for being overly confident about this one point in the video, because people don't usually get terminated for copyright abuse, even if it's against the rules. It's happened before, but nothing happens usually, even with the most high-profile cases. So basing part of a video around the termination of a YouTube channel probably isn't the brightest idea, but I can also understand why he thought the idea would work. I think that his video could have been better structured without the talk of YouTube termination, however. Explain what he did, his bad past, why people need to be wary of him, all of that is fine. But you're just wasting your own time when making the video if you're trying to make something happen that most likely won't. That's about all the criticism I'm going to give Actman here, however, because I want to talk about something insane that happened. After Actman uploaded this video, Quantum decided that it would be a good idea to call Actman's mother about the drama and threaten him and his family with legal action. This is a low level to stoop to, even for Quantum at the time. Imagine causing a stir online, getting criticism, and self-destructing to where you get someone's private life involved, but you still somehow feel like you were in the right. Even if hypothetically, Actman was refusing to talk to him before this, it would still be insane, but both him and Mischief were trying to talk to him on Discord, and it completely failed, so this clearly wasn't Quantum trying to have some good faith conversation. Although there are technically worse cases than this online regarding copyright, I can't act like this one isn't one of the worst. People don't usually go as far as this, and it's explicitly why I'm choosing to make this very carefully. I want to make sure that I have all my bases covered. On a final note, I want to mention that Actman got massively screwed over in the aftermath of this entire thing by getting his YouTube channel demonetized temporarily. He might have made some jokes that he shouldn't have in his circumstances, but that doesn't mean that he deserved what he got. And I just wanted to quickly make note of that before concluding this section. Quantum TV is or was a disease to the platform, and it's good that the guy has gradually fallen back into obscurity, only to be remembered nowadays by a TV community that nobody actually thinks about. Hopefully this video is one of the last times that people actually utter his name, and that's all I have left to say in this section. Moving on. In this video, we've covered 7 individuals who delivered false strikes out to people who went against them. So what exactly have we learned from looking through all of this? Well, the Streisand effect is at full effect here. Every time that someone has tried to strike something down to remove it off the internet, the backlash hits him back about 10 times as hard. It's to the point where it would have been better if they had just left the video alone in the first place. And no matter how many situations happen, it seems like YouTubers never learn. I might have only covered 7 people today, but there are many others who get affected by this frequently. It always gets coverage too, with commentary channels calling them out. The problem will never go away, which is good for people like me, honestly, because it means more content. I hope you guys enjoyed this 20 to 30 minute video. I can't tell you how long this has taken for me to make, and I'm glad that it's finally finished. And before anyone asks me why this took months to come out, it's laziness. No other way to put it. Pure laziness. I will try to get videos out this year. How frequently will I be? I don't know. I just make these when I get ideas at this point. My social media accounts are in the description, so check those out if you want. And with that, I'll be taking my leave. Oh yeah, one last thing. #FLM.